The house still smelled faintly of her perfume, even though weeks had passed since the funeral. It lingered in the curtains, in the cushions, in the very wood of the furniture, a soft trace of a life that was gone but not entirely erased. Daniel stood in the living room, the silence pressing on him, his hand resting on the arm of the couch where his mother had often sat with a book. He had told himself he came back only to sort through her things, to take care of the practicalities that death demands. But as he stared at the boxes stacked in the corner, he realized it was more than that. He wanted answers, though he couldn't have said what questions burned most in him. His sister, Clara, had refused to come today, claiming it was too soon, that she wasn't ready to step into the rooms still heavy with their mother's absence. Daniel didn't push her. He needed the solitude, the ability to sort through memories without her sharp commentary, without her constant reminders of how differently the two of them had loved their mother. He started in the study, a small room lined with bookshelves. Their mother had been an avid reader, and he ran his hand along the spines, remembering how she would lose herself in novels for hours. When he opened the drawer of her writing desk, he found neat stacks of letters tied with ribbon, old photographs, and at the very back, a worn leather-bound journal. He hesitated before pulling it out. It wasn't unusual. She had always kept diaries, jotting down thoughts and daily details. But this one looked older, its cover darkened by time and use, its pages slightly warped as though it had lived through damp summers and restless nights. Daniel sat down, the weight of the book heavy in his hands. He told himself he was intruding, that whatever secrets it held should remain hers alone. But another voice inside whispered, "She left it here for a reason." He opened the first pages, finding entries from decades ago. Simple things at first, complaints about work, reflections on books she had read, notes about Daniel and Clara when they were children. Her words were gentle, affectionate, filled with the kind of warmth that made his chest ache with longing. He read about his first day of school, about Clara's stubbornness as a toddler, about holidays long forgotten. For a while, he smiled through the tears. But as he flipped further, the tone shifted. The handwriting grew more hurried, the sentences fractured. One entry stopped him cold. "The secret grows heavier with every passing year. I thought I could live with it, bury it, but it refuses to stay silent. There was another child. No one knows. No one must ever know." Daniel's heart thudded in his chest. He reread the lines, his eyes blurring, as if he had misunderstood. Another child? His breath quickened. He turned the page, hungry, terrified. It was a mistake, but also not. I loved him, but he was not mine to keep. When I held the baby, my whole world cracked. How could I explain? How could I tell Daniel and Clara one day that they had another sibling born in shadows? I never told their father. I never told anyone. Daniel dropped the book into his lap, his hands trembling. The room seemed to tilt, the air thick. His mother, the woman he had thought he knew better than anyone, had carried this weight for years, and he had never seen even a glimmer of it. He thought of Clara, of how she would react, and his stomach clenched. She already carried resentment, always convinced that Daniel was their mother's favorite. What would she say if she learned their family wasn't just the two of them, that their inheritance, their identity, was tied to a lie? He forced himself to keep reading, though dread coiled around his chest. The entries spilled with pain and secrecy. His mother had written of the pregnancy as something she endured alone, hiding away for months, inventing excuses. She described giving birth in a distant clinic, a nightmarish solitude that etched itself into her forever. She never said who the father was. She never said what became of the child. Only vague sentences. "I left him where he might be cared for. I convinced myself it was mercy, but I think of him still." Daniel closed the book with a snap, his hands slick with sweat. He pressed his palms to his face, willing himself to wake from what felt like a dream. But when he lowered them, the journal still sat there, silent and damning. His mind raced. If this was true, then the will they had just discussed with the lawyer was incomplete. The estate, the house, everything, it wasn't meant to be divided between just two. There was a third heir. Somewhere out there, maybe alive, maybe lost, but real enough to cast a shadow over everything they thought they knew. The floor creaked, and Daniel nearly leapt from his chair. Clara stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes narrowing as she took in the journal on his lap. "What are you hiding?" she asked, her voice sharp, accusatory. Daniel scrambled to shut the journal, but she was already stepping closer, her gaze locked on him. Is that one of her diaries? Give it to me. Clara, wait. Don't tell me to wait, she snapped, her voice rising, brittle with grief and suspicion. You think I don't know you've been digging through everything, trying to get a bigger piece of the inheritance? You think I don't see what you're doing? Daniel stood, holding the journal against his chest, his heart pounding. It's not about money. It's not about any of that. It's something else. Something you're not ready for. Her laugh was sharp, humorless. Don't play games with me, Daniel. We buried her together, and now you want to bury the truth too? Show me. He looked at her, his sister, her eyes burning with the same stubbornness that had always made them clash. He wanted to protect her, to spare her the blow that had just shattered him. But he knew it was impossible. The journal wasn't his secret to keep. Slowly, his hands shaking, he extended it toward her. She snatched it, flipping through the pages with a ferocity that chilled him. Her eyes darted, her lips moving as she read, and then her breath hitched. She froze. The color drained from her face. When she finally looked up, her expression was something between fury and horror. Another child? She whispered. The room seemed to close in around them, the walls bearing witness to the revelation neither of them had been prepared to face. The silence stretched, brittle, dangerous, until Clara's voice cracked it like glass. If this is true, then everything changes. Clara slammed the journal shut, the sound echoing through the study like a gunshot. Her knuckles were white against the leather cover, her jaw clenched tight. Daniel watched her, his own pulse racing, unsure whether to speak or wait for her storm to break. When she finally did, her voice was low but cutting, each word dripping with accusation. You knew. You sat here and read it, and you were ready to keep it from me. Daniel raised his hands, defensive, pleading. I wasn't trying to hide it. I just found it, 5 minutes before you walked in. I didn't even know how to process it myself. Don't lie to me. Clara snapped, stepping closer. Her eyes were glossy, but her anger burned hotter than her grief. You always think you can protect me, or keep things from me, like I'm some child. You read this, Daniel, and you thought you could decide what I deserve to know. He wanted to argue, to remind her of all the times she had twisted his attempts to shield her into power plays. But the weight of the journal, the secret it carried, silenced him. Clara, he said softly, this isn't just about us. If it's true, then there's someone else out there. Someone we've never met. Someone who could walk in tomorrow and claim everything. Her grip tightened on the journal, as if she could crush it into dust. Or someone you'll go searching for so you can be the hero. I know you. You'll make this about yourself, about how noble you are for wanting to find our long-lost sibling. And what happens to me, Daniel? What happens to my share, to the life I've built around knowing what's mine? His chest tightened. He hated how quickly she had cut to the fear that gnawed at him too. We don't even know if they're alive, he said. All we have is her word. And you know she wasn't always straightforward. Don't you dare, Clara hissed, her eyes flashing. Don't you dare call her a liar. She was our mother. If she wrote it, it's true. Daniel bit back his retort. He could hear the tremor in her voice, the way she used anger as armor. He knew that pain, because he felt it too. Their mother wasn't supposed to leave mysteries behind. She wasn't supposed to tear the foundation of their family apart from beyond the grave. Clara pressed the journal into his chest with a force that made him stumble back. Fine. You want to deal with it? Then deal with it. Find this ghost child if you can. But don't expect me to stand by while you hand them half of what's mine. She turned on her heel, her shoulders stiff, her breath uneven, and stormed out of the room. The front door slammed moments later, leaving Daniel alone in the silence that felt heavier than before. He sank into the chair, the journal back in his lap, his mind spinning. Every entry he'd read gnawed at him. His mother's despair, her cryptic hints. He needed more. Hours passed as he combed through the pages, searching for anything concrete. Names, dates, places. Finally, near the end of the journal, he found it. A passage that chilled him to the bone. I left him in Riverton, a clinic by the river. They promised he would be placed with a family. I signed the papers with shaking hands. I thought it was the only way. But sometimes, at night, I swear I hear his cries. Riverton. Daniel knew the town. It was less than an hour's drive away, a place they had visited as children for summer fairs and fireworks. To think that all this time, just beyond their familiar world, there might have been someone who carried their blood, it was almost unbearable. His phone buzzed on the desk, and he glanced at the screen. Clara. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he scribbled the name of the town on a scrap of paper and shoved the journal into his bag. He needed to see for himself. Riverton greeted him with its quiet streets and peeling storefronts. The river flowed sluggishly under a gray sky, the autumn air sharp with the scent of damp leaves. Daniel parked outside the clinic, a squat brick building with faded signage, half forgotten by time. Inside, the receptionist was young, too young to have any memory of the decades past. When Daniel asked about records from the early 1990s, she gave him a polite but firm shake of her head. Those files are sealed. Only with court approval or immediate family authorization could anyone see them. Daniel leaned on the counter, his desperation slipping into his voice. I am family. If what I think is true, my mother gave up a child here. That makes me his brother. The receptionist softened, but her answer didn't change. I'm sorry. Even if that's the case, the records are confidential. I could lose my job. He left the building frustrated, his fists clenching at his sides. The world outside felt colder, harsher. For the first time, he realized just how difficult this search would be. Without names, without cooperation, how could he find someone who had lived in the shadows his entire life? As he stood by the river, staring at the water's endless churn, his phone rang again. Clara. Against his better judgment, he answered. Where are you? Her voice was sharp, laced with suspicion. I went to Riverton, he admitted. Silence, then a harsh laugh. Of course you did. Playing detective. Do you realize what you're doing? If you dig too deep, you're going to find things you wish you hadn't. And if you find this person, if they're even alive, you'll bring them right into our lives, right into our inheritance. Do you think they'll just smile and shake hands? They'll take everything, Daniel. Everything. It's not about money, he said, though the words rang hollow even to him. It's about the truth. The truth. Clara's voice cracked. The truth is she lied to us our whole lives. And now you want to crown some stranger as our sibling? Over my dead body. The line went dead, leaving Daniel staring at his reflection in the water, his stomach churning. He realized Clara wasn't just angry. She was scared. And fear, in her, was dangerous. As he drove back from Riverton, the headlights cutting through the darkness, he couldn't shake the feeling that Clara wasn't going to sit quietly while he searched. She would act, and she wouldn't care what damage she caused in the process. When he pulled into the driveway, he noticed something was off. The front door was ajar. His chest tightened as he stepped inside. The study lights were on, the desk drawers yanked open, papers scattered across the floor. And the journal was gone. Daniel froze in the doorway, his breath caught in his throat. The house was silent, but not in the way it should be. The air carried the faint scent of his mother's perfume, stirred up from the rifled drawers and disturbed papers, as though her ghost had swept through the study. But it wasn't her. He knew who had done this. Clara. The missing journal was proof enough. For a moment, his anger flared, hot and consuming. She had accused him of hiding things, yet she had stolen the very key to their family's truth. He wanted to storm to her house, demand she return it, but something in him hesitated. Confrontation wouldn't bring answers. It would only push her further into her corner, and Daniel couldn't risk losing the one piece of evidence they had. He sank into the chair, his mind racing, hands trembling against the edge of the desk. Without the journal, he had nothing but scraps, Riverton, a clinic, whispers of a child who might not even exist. He was back at the beginning, powerless. A sharp knock at the door snapped him from his spiral. He stiffened, every muscle tense. Who could it be at this hour? When he opened the door, a woman stood there, mid-40s, rain-soaked, her dark hair pulled into a messy knot, eyes wide with urgency. Daniel Collins? She asked, her voice quiet but firm. Yes, he said slowly, confusion knitting his brow. She extended a small, worn envelope toward him. I think we need to talk. He hesitated, staring at the envelope as if it were a snake ready to strike. Who are you? My name is Evelyn Parker, she said. I worked at the Riverton Clinic. Years ago. I read your mother's name in the ledger. I shouldn't even know this much, but when she came in that day, I was there. Daniel's chest tightened, a chill running down his spine. You're saying you remember her? From when she... He couldn't finish the sentence. Evelyn nodded, her eyes heavy with memory. She was terrified, shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. She asked me if she would ever see him again. When I told her no, she cried harder than I'd ever seen a woman cry. I never forgot her face. Daniel gestured for her to come inside. She stepped into the study, her gaze sweeping over the chaos. "Looks like I'm not the only one with secrets tonight," she muttered. Daniel ignored the jab, his hands clenching. "Do you know what happened to him? The child?" Evelyn shook her head. "I can't say for certain. The clinic worked with private adoption agencies. Records were sealed. But sometimes paperwork slips. That's what I brought you." She slid the envelope across the desk. Daniel opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a photocopied form, faded but legible. His mother's signature scrawled at the bottom, the date nearly 30 years old. And a name, Baby Collins. His throat tightened as he traced the letters. Proof. Not just words in a journal, not just rumors. Proof. "That's all I could get before the files were locked away for good," Evelyn said. "But it means he's out there. Somewhere." Daniel looked up, his voice breaking. "Why are you telling me this now?" Evelyn's gaze flickered to the floor. "Because I saw your mother again. Years later. She came back to the clinic, asking if anyone had ever inquired about her son. She was desperate. She thought she had made a mistake. And I promised her that if the time ever came, I'd help her family. That's why I'm here." Daniel leaned back, his head spinning. For the first time, the weight on his chest lifted slightly, not because the burden was lighter, but because it was real, tangible. He wasn't chasing shadows anymore. He had a thread to follow. "Thank you," he whispered. Evelyn's face softened. "Don't thank me yet. If your sister took that journal, she'll fight you tooth and nail. She'll bury this truth if it means keeping what's hers. You're not just searching for a brother, you're walking into war." The words hit him like a warning bell. He already knew Clara would do anything to protect her share, but hearing it from a stranger made the danger sharper. Evelyn stood, smoothing her wet coat. "I can't stay, but you'll need help. The adoption agency still exists. Start there. Ask for Horizon Families. That's who we worked with back then." She was gone as quickly as she came, leaving the house heavy with her absence and the envelope glowing like a beacon on the desk. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the name, the date, the fragile proof of a life lived in parallel to his own. But the silence didn't last. His phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Clara. It was an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, low and uncertain, filled the line. "Is this Daniel Collins?" His stomach dropped. "Yes. Who is this?" The man paused. "My name is Andrew. Andrew Hale. I think I might be your brother." Daniel's hand tightened around the phone, his mind struggling to catch up with the words. He wanted to laugh, to scream, to demand proof. "How did you get this number?" "Your mother," Andrew said quietly. "She wrote to me. Years ago. Letters I wasn't supposed to have, but I kept them. One of them had your name. I've been debating for months whether to reach out. And then, I heard about her death in the obituary. I knew it was now or never." Daniel's heart pounded, his vision blurring. The world tilted under his feet. This was impossible, surreal, and yet it was happening. "If you're telling the truth, then we need to meet," Daniel said, his voice trembling. "But not here. Not where Clara can find you." "Clara," Andrew repeated, the name unfamiliar in his mouth. "She's the sister, right? The one who doesn't want me to exist." "She'll do worse than deny you," Daniel warned. "She'll destroy you if she thinks you're a threat." Silence stretched, then Andrew whispered. "Then maybe it's time she learned I'm not so easy to erase." Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat at the desk with the journal still missing, Evelyn's envelope open in front of him, and the echo of Andrew's voice trapped in his ears. A brother. Flesh and blood. It was supposed to be the answer, but instead it felt like the floor had given way beneath him. Every scenario played out in his head. Clara finding out before he could act, Andrew turning out to be a fraud, the inheritance battle exploding into lawsuits and betrayals. By dawn, the weight of it all pressed him into silence. He called Andrew the next morning, arranging to meet in a diner 2 towns over, a place where Clara was unlikely to show her face. He drove with his heart slamming against his ribs, every mile dragging him closer to something he wasn't sure he wanted but couldn't ignore. When Andrew walked in, Daniel felt the room tilt. He was younger by a few years, with the same sharp jawline their mother had, the same gray eyes that mirrored Daniel's when he looked in the mirror. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the air so thick it was almost unbreathable. "It's you," Daniel finally said, his throat dry. Andrew nodded slowly. "I wasn't sure until now." They spoke in hushed tones, voices heavy with all the years lost. Andrew had grown up in foster homes, bouncing from one family to another, never knowing the truth about where he came from until a packet of letters from their mother arrived in his late teens. They were unsigned, written with careful ambiguity, but he had pieced them together. "I thought about coming sooner," Andrew admitted, his hands clenched around his coffee cup, "but I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't believe me. Afraid you'd hate me for existing." Daniel shook his head, though deep inside, fear gnawed at him too. "I don't hate you. But Clara, she won't accept this. She'll see you as an intruder, someone here to take what's hers." As if summoned, his phone buzzed on the table. Clara's name flashed across the screen. He didn't answer. Not here. Not with Andrew watching him. But dread coiled in his gut, because he knew what she wanted. The journal, the inheritance, the control. When he got home that evening, the storm had already arrived. Clara was waiting at the house, her car parked crooked in the driveway, her face a mask of fury. "Where is he?" she snapped the moment he stepped out. "Who?" Daniel feigned ignorance, though his voice cracked under the weight of the lie. "Don't play games with me. I know you've been digging. Rivorton, adoption agencies. And now there's some stranger calling himself our brother? You think I wouldn't find out?" Daniel's blood ran cold. She had eyes everywhere, people feeding her scraps of information. "He's not a stranger," he said carefully. "He's family." Clara's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Family? No. He's a ghost. A shadow our mother created in her shame. You think one piece of paper and some sob story makes him our equal? He's after the money, Daniel. Don't be a fool. This isn't about the money." Daniel shouted, louder than he intended. Birds scattered from the trees, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Clara's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. "Then what is it about? Proving that mother wasn't the saint you thought she was? Destroying what little we have left just to chase a lie?" "It's not a lie," Daniel said, his chest heaving. "He looks like us. He has her letters. Evelyn confirmed everything. He's real, Clara. And you can't erase him just because you don't want him to exist." For a heartbeat, something flickered in her eyes, not doubt, but fear. Then it hardened into steel. "If you bring him into this, Daniel, you'll regret it. Don't think I won't fight you in court. Don't think I won't drag his name through the mud until he wishes he never came forward." Her words were venom, and Daniel realized then just how far she was willing to go. This wasn't just resistance. It was war. That night, Daniel called Andrew again, his voice shaking. "She knows, and she'll do anything to stop you." Andrew's reply was steady, colder than before. "Then we can't run anymore. We confront her. Together." Daniel hesitated. He wanted to protect Andrew, to shield him from Clara's fury, but deep down he knew there was no other way. Avoiding her only gave her more time to build her arsenal. Facing her was dangerous, but delaying was worse. They arranged to meet at the family house 2 nights later, the 3 of them under one roof. As the day approached, Daniel felt the collapse pressing in. The neighbors whispered, the lawyer called about unusual activity with the estate papers, and Clara's cold silence only confirmed his fears. Every bond, every fragile thread that had held their family together, was fraying beyond repair. On the night of the meeting, Daniel stood in the study where it had all begun, his mother's perfume still faint in the air, the envelope with Andrew's name locked in his desk drawer. Clara arrived first, her heels sharp against the hardwood floor, her expression unreadable. She stood with her arms crossed, every inch of her daring him to make a move. When Andrew walked in, the room went silent. Clara's face drained of color, then twisted into something darker than rage. It wasn't just disbelief. It was terror. For the first time, Daniel saw her mask slip, and behind it was something raw and broken. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, "You shouldn't exist." And in that moment, Daniel knew the collapse was complete. The family they once had was gone. Whatever happened next would not be reconciliation, it would be survival. The room felt too small for the 3 of them, the air thick enough to choke on. Daniel stood between Clara and Andrew as though he were the only barrier keeping them from tearing each other apart. Clara's eyes were locked on Andrew with a venom so sharp it made his skin crawl. Andrew, however, did not flinch. He stood his ground, shoulders squared, gaze steady, the faintest flicker of defiance burning in his gray eyes, so much like their mother's that it hurt Daniel to look at him. "Say it," Clara demanded, her voice trembling with restrained fury. "Say what you think you are." Andrew's jaw clenched. "I don't think. I know. I'm her son. Just like you. Just like Daniel." The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Clara let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob strangled in her throat. "Do you even hear yourself? She was ashamed of you. She hid you. You're nothing but a secret she wished would disappear. And you want to walk in here and take what doesn't belong to you?" Andrew's hands curled into fists at his sides. "I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to be abandoned. But I have a right to know where I come from, to claim what's mine." "Yours?" Clara spat the word like poison. "Nothing here is yours. Not her house, not her name, not her memory. You were her mistake." Daniel couldn't take it anymore. "Stop it." His shout cracked through the tension, raw and desperate. "Do you hear yourself, Clara? You're talking about our brother. Our blood. Whether you like it or not, he exists. He always existed. And Mother carried that pain alone because she knew you would react like this." For the first time, Clara faltered. Her eyes flickered with something fragile, something Daniel hadn't seen in years: fear. He pressed on, his voice shaking but unrelenting. "I read the letters. I saw the adoption papers. She wrote about him, Clara. She loved him, even if she couldn't keep him. She thought of him every day. And you would erase him? Pretend he was never real, just so you can hold on to money and property?" "It's not about money," Clara whispered, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "It's about what she did to us. Do you know what it was like, Daniel? Watching her leave for weeks without a word, wondering why she cried at night, why she wouldn't look us in the eyes. We lived with the shadow of her secret, and now it has a name. Him." She pointed at Andrew, her hand trembling. Andrew's voice broke the silence, softer now, but edged with pain. "Do you think it was easier for me? I grew up with nothing. No family, no name. Just questions that ate me alive. And now that I finally have answers, you'd rather destroy me than face the truth?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, though she blinked them away furiously. "You don't get to waltz in here and call yourself family. You don't know what that word means." Andrew took a step closer, his voice dropping low. "Maybe not. But neither do you." The words hung like a blade in the air. Daniel felt his heart pounding, torn between them, knowing that this confrontation could shatter everything or burn away the lies that had poisoned them for decades. "Enough," he said, his voice steadier now, fueled by the urgency that burned in his chest. "This isn't about any of us anymore. This is about her. Mother. She left the journal because she wanted us to know the truth. She didn't want Andrew to be a ghost. She wanted him to have a place here." Clara's breathing quickened, her hands shaking as if the weight of his words crushed something inside her. "No," she whispered. "She wanted me to carry it. She wanted me to bear the shame. And now you're all dumping it on me, like I didn't already give up enough." Daniel's chest ached. For the first time, he saw not just his furious sister, but a broken woman who had carried bitterness like armor. "We all gave up something, Clara. But we don't have to keep tearing each other apart." Andrew's voice cracked, raw with emotion. "I don't want your house. I don't want your money. I just want my name. I just want to belong." Silence followed, long and unbearable. Clara's lips parted, but no words came. Her face twisted as if she wanted to scream, but instead, a sob tore free, unrestrained and jagged. She turned away, shoulders heaving, clutching herself like the world was collapsing beneath her feet. Daniel stepped forward, his hand hovering near her shoulder, but never touching. He knew better than to force her, not when she stood on the edge of breaking. "It's your choice," he said softly. "You can keep fighting, or you can finally let go. But either way, Andrew is here now, and I won't let you erase him." Clara turned, her face streaked with tears and rage. "If you stand with him, then you stand against me." The words cut deep, but Daniel didn't waver. He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "If that's what it takes to tell the truth, then yes. I'll stand against you." Andrew's breath caught, his eyes wide with something like relief. For the first time, he wasn't alone. Clara shook her head slowly, her expression hardening into a mask of finality. "Then this family is dead." She stormed from the room, her footsteps echoing through the house like thunder, the door slamming behind her with a finality that rattled the walls. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the sound of Andrew exhaling shakily, his hands trembling as he sank into a chair. "I didn't want this," he whispered. "I just wanted to know her." Daniel closed his eyes, the weight of everything pressing down on him. "We can't change what she did, but we can decide what comes next." He looked at his brother, and for the first time, the word didn't feel foreign. It felt right. But Clara's words lingered, bitter and final, and Daniel knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning of a new battle, one that might cost them everything. The house felt emptier after Clara's departure, though her presence lingered in every corner like a storm cloud that refused to clear. Daniel sat across from Andrew at the old dining table, the wood scarred by years of family meals, arguments, and silences. Now it carried the weight of a new reality neither of them fully knew how to face. Andrew's hands rested on the table, open and uncertain, as if he expected someone to take them or push them away. "She hates me," he said finally, his voice hollow. "She always will." Daniel shook his head slowly. "Clara doesn't hate you. She hates what she lost, what she thinks was stolen from her. She doesn't know how to separate you from the wound." Andrew's laugh was bitter, without humor. "Then maybe she's right. Maybe I shouldn't have come here." The words pierced Daniel, sharp with resignation, as though his brother had already chosen exile over belonging. "No," Daniel said firmly. "You belong here. She'll see it eventually, even if it takes years. And if she doesn't, then it's on her, not you." Andrew lifted his eyes, studying him with a mixture of skepticism and fragile hope. "Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. You could have turned your back like she did." Daniel hesitated, the truth pressing against his ribs. "Because I see her in you. The same eyes, the same stubbornness. And because she wanted you here, even if she couldn't say it out loud. I won't betray that." The silence stretched, softer now, not hostile but heavy with unspoken things. Then Andrew nodded, a slow acceptance that looked more like surrender than victory. "Thank you," he murmured. The days that followed blurred into one another. Clara's absence was a wound that deepened with every sunrise, her silence more painful than her anger had ever been. The legal battle began almost immediately. Clara had filed a petition contesting the inheritance, claiming Andrew had no right to anything. Lawyers flooded the house with paperwork, cold words that turned blood into property and memory into leverage. Daniel found himself caught in the middle, torn between protecting his mother's wishes and shielding Andrew from Clara's wrath. The court hearings were brutal. Clara sat across from them, her face a mask of ice, her words sharp as knives. She painted Andrew as an opportunist, a liar who had forged his way into their lives. Daniel countered with the journal, the letters, the undeniable proof of their mother's truth. Every word spoken in that sterile courtroom carved deeper fractures into the family that had already been split in two. One evening, after another grueling session, Andrew sat on the porch, staring out into the twilight. "Maybe she's right," he said again, voice barely more than a whisper. "Maybe I don't deserve any of it. Maybe I'm just the mistake." Daniel stood beside him, the cool evening air brushing against his skin. "You're not the mistake," he said firmly. "The mistake was hiding you, pretending you didn't exist. But you're here now. That means something." Andrew's eyes glistened in the fading light. "Then why does it hurt so much?" Daniel had no answer. He only sat beside him, the silence between them carrying more comfort than words ever could. Weeks turned into months, and the case dragged on. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors whispered. The family name, once a source of quiet pride, became a scandal spoken in hushed tones. Clara withdrew further into herself, refusing every attempt Daniel made to reach her. She had built a fortress of bitterness, and no one could break through. The final verdict came on a gray morning, rain tapping against the courthouse windows like a warning. The judge ruled that Andrew was, by every measure of proof, their mother's son and rightful heir. The estate would be divided into 3 equal shares. It was a legal victory, but it felt hollow. Clara stormed out of the courtroom without a word, her heels echoing like gunshots down the marble hall. Andrew stood frozen, the weight of the ruling pressing down on him. "I didn't want this," he whispered. "I didn't want to take anything from her." Daniel put a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't take. You were given. There's a difference." But Andrew's eyes remained clouded with doubt. That night, Daniel returned to the house alone. Andrew had chosen to stay at a motel, unwilling to step into the place that had become a battlefield. The silence of the house was suffocating, the walls heavy with memory and loss. He walked into his mother's room, the scent of her perfume still faint in the air, and opened the drawer where the journal had first been hidden. The pages were worn, the ink smudged by time and tears, but one entry caught his eye, an entry he hadn't noticed before, tucked near the back. In it, their mother wrote, "If they find him, if they bring him home, then my silence will not have been in vain. Let them hate me if they must, but let them not hate him. He is mine. He is theirs. And if they cannot love him, then let him at least know I did." Daniel closed the journal, tears burning his eyes. He knew then that whatever happened, he could not let Clara's bitterness be the final word. The family might be fractured, but the truth had been spoken, and the truth mattered. Months later, the three of them stood together again, though not by choice. It was the anniversary of their mother's death, and the town's small cemetery was quiet under the weight of overcast skies. Clara arrived late, her face pale, her eyes rimmed red as though she had cried but refused to show weakness. She didn't look at Andrew, didn't speak to him, but she didn't leave either. She stood on the opposite side of the grave, her arms crossed tightly as if to hold herself together. Daniel read a short prayer, his voice trembling, his words simple but honest. When he finished, the silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, Clara whispered, so softly Daniel almost didn't hear it. "She would have hated this. Us like this." Andrew's eyes flicked toward her, but he said nothing. Daniel swallowed hard. "Then maybe we stop fighting. For her. Just for one day." Clara didn't respond, but she didn't leave. She stayed until the rain began to fall, standing in silence beside the brother she refused to claim and the brother who refused to give up on either of them. When they finally walked away from the grave, Daniel knew the rift would not heal overnight. Perhaps it never would. But in that moment, there was no shouting, no courtroom, no slammed doors. Only three broken siblings, bound by blood and loss, carrying their mother's secret and their own scars into an uncertain future. And though Clara's final words still echoed, "This family is dead," Daniel held on to the faint, stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, they could learn to live again.